Hey guys, in this video we're going to go ahead and take a look at yet another portable handheld emulation device. This is the ANBERNIC RG351P, and we're going to see just how well it emulates. This is Steve from Restalgia, and let's get started. So before we get started, I do want to thank ANBERNIC for sending this device to me for a review. Now I did in fact pay for the additional colors, but as always I will give you guys my honest thoughts based on my personal experience with these devices. Now let's go ahead and get this thing out of the box. Front and center we do have the RG351P, but we are going to set that aside for the time being and see what else comes inside of the box. The first accessory out of the box is going to be a USB-A to USB-C type charging and data cable. Next, we have an OTG adapter for the USB-C type port. We've also got an 802.11n Wi-Fi dongle included in the box, which does mean that the device itself does not have built-in Wi-Fi. Next, we are provided with a glass screen protector, which is actually something I love seeing when companies do, especially for these types of devices. And finally, we do have a fairly basic user guide insert that goes over basic operation and controls. Now let's look at the main device itself. The device I'm specifically showing off in this video is actually the white color variant, but there are two other colors this model is available in, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that on screen shortly. But before I do that, I did want to talk a little bit more about the form factor, and I actually really do like the design and layout of this device. It fits comfortably in your hands and even has two comfort grips on the rear. These make holding the device in your hands for long periods of times a lot more manageable and more comfortable, most importantly. Overall design looks sharp, modern, and well laid out. The buttons do feel really good and the D-pad on it is solid. The analog sticks are fairly typical analog sticks that most of these Chinese manufacturers are using on handheld devices, and generally speaking, the RG351P does have a very premium feel to it. Now, I mentioned that there are three different color variants to this device, and those would be the white that I just unboxed and showed, but there's also a black on black version which does look pretty tough, and finally a purple on gray that really does remind me of the indigo colored Nintendo GameCube. Now, ANBERNIC did recently release the RG351M, which is essentially the same device, however the outer shell is actually made of metal, and I do plan on doing a review for that device in the near future. Now this thing actually does look really good, but let's dig deeper into the internal specs. So out of the box, this device comes loaded with the Rockchip 3326 CPU clocked in at 1.5 GHz. That's also bundled with the Mali G31 MP2 GPU. It has 1 GB of DDR3L RAM and 64 GB of internal storage that is expandable up to 256 GB with a micro SD card. The screen is a 3.5 IPS display with a resolution of 320 by 480, and it has a 3500 mAh rechargeable battery that should provide up to 8 hours of playback. Looking around the device at the different I/O, on the bottom of the device we have our stereo speakers as well as an SD card slot and factory reset button. The left side of the device has a volume dial, while the right side of the device houses the power button. The top of the device has our L and R buttons, as well as two USB-C ports, one for data and charging, and the second for data only. We will also see in the middle there a 3.5mm headphone jack. The front of the device has all of our other buttons, which are actually laid out quite nicely. You have the select button, D-pad, and left analog stick on the left-hand side, as well as the start, 4 action buttons, and right analog stick on the other side of the device. Overall, it fits nicely in my hands, and the buttons have great responsiveness and provide good quality feedback when pressed. The device itself is running on a Linux OS and does come preloaded with the EmuElec front end. Now this is going to look and feel very similar to RetroPie. so if you're familiar with that, you should have absolutely no issues navigating this device. This also means that most of your games are going to be running through RetroArch, so you do have a fair amount of flexibility in adjusting cores for better emulation. I mentioned earlier that the Wi-Fi dongle was included in the box, and that's simply because in early designs, the Wi-Fi module that was built in ended up actually causing interference with their hardware. So ANBERNIC ultimately decided to ditch that feature and opted to include a dongle in the box, and although I'm not a huge fan of that, I do at least appreciate that they did provide the dongle for you if you do plan on using Wi-Fi on the device itself. Audio quality on these devices is actually fairly good as well. The speakers do a reasonable job for their size, and they are plenty loud for a single person handheld. Here is a small sample of how they sound. So next, we're going to go ahead and move straight into emulation, and we're going to start easy with some Super Nintendo testing. Now the device is plenty strong enough to emulate Super Nintendo, including any of the FX enabled games like Star Fox and Super Mario World 2. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to Nintendo DS, and I actually really like using these types of devices for DS emulation. Out of the box, you've got the ability to flip the screen view using the L2 button and change the screen orientation using the R2 button. Not all games are going to run perfectly, but most titles I played did run perfectly fine with little to no frame rate drops. Next, we're going to take a look at some PlayStation 1 games, and to be completely honest, this played every PS1 game at full speed with no issues. In fact, this device might actually be the perfect portable PlayStation 1 handheld emulator.
And lose all your health. You can return to the last butterfly you passed and start again.
So now we're going to shift gears into a more demanding console, and that's going to be N64. And to be honest, this did perform the poorest out of any of the consoles I tried. Now, to be fair, N64 doesn't really run well on almost any sub $100 handheld, but we do have the advantage to try to optimize and adjust the settings just a little bit within RetroArch, and as such we can get some titles to run fairly well, but others, including easy to emulate games like Kirby Crystal Shards, run fairly rough with the out-of-the-box settings. Other optimized games do run well, like Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64. Now on to my personal favorite retro console, the Sega Dreamcast, and this was another one of those hit and miss consoles. I found that you were actually really able to successfully get good performance out of 2D fighters like Capcom vs SNK 2, but we did have some frame rate drops and some audio stuttering with many of the 3D games. Even still, games were totally playable, but I'm gonna actually let you see this for yourself.
Strengthens the soul of Nightmare.
Hi, taxi!
Les Hartford,
Leave it to you. Go to the department
it's
store.
showtime.
Taxi! Taxi!
And then finally, we're going to take a look at PSP and see what it can do. Now, to be fair, you will absolutely not be playing higher demanding titles like God of War Chains of Olympus on these devices, but I did actually have a lot of success with the less CPU and GPU demanding PSP titles.
Jump so high you defy the laws of gravity is a must-have accessory in Little Big Planet, and your action button will furnish you with this. Give the action button a short, sharp stab.
So overall, this is a really capable device, and I really do like the design and style of it. The form factor ANBERNIC has gone with is one of my favorites for a portable device, and overall performance of this handheld has much exceeded my expectations. I would say you should pass on this device if you have your heart set on solid N64 emulation. However, this is definitely something I would recommend if you're in the market for a portable device to play your 8 and 16-bit era games, along with Nintendo DS and PlayStation 1 sprinkled in with the occasional PSP and Dreamcast titles. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys. Please let me know in the comment sections what your thought is on the RG351P. Are you guys interested in seeing dedicated emulation videos for these devices? If so, what console and games do you want to see emulated? Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Give the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will talk to you guys again real soon.